It was an honour to work with the dead. But Rylan Hunt, 4 stone 52 inches eviscerated, my notes read, had died 2 days before his 13th birthday. And no funeral rites would fix that. I uncurled his clenched fists, the tense muscles creaking like tinder, and peeled off his sodden gloves. His mother had made them last autumn, and they'd been blue yesterday. Now the whole of him was red and brown and purple, the stains of death settling beneath his skin. I turned and tossed his gloves into the compost pile that would become his funeral plot. The collecting pools sloshed about my knees. Every part of him loved, and every part of him returned to the earth except for the parts that seeped into me. I was a graveyard, so no one else needed to be. Fell Hollow's only caretaker. It wasn't a title I wanted, but there had been nothing else left to do in this town when I arrived 7 years ago. And it means I'm here for you, I said, one shaking hand on his arm. Ryland's skin was in tatters, ribs splayed open like a hurricane lily. I collected what blood I could, but there was barely enough for funeral rites. There was hardly anything left of him. The person who'd done it had been captured, but breathing still tasted bitter. What good was vengeance? Ryland was dead. We feared the old tales of our long-gone demigod overlords, the noble and the vile, but we mortals were far worse. They might have ruled over us, warred with us, and dined on us, but the haughty court of peers with its money and soldiers was far more vicious than any old gossip's tale. I covered Ryland's torso with a sheet of canvas. My needle slipped through his skin easily, stitching the canvas to him to hide the wound. The stitching was an old comfort, the steady movement the same sway as the river waves I'd been born on. Death was as common there as it was here. Only the wealthy, or more often the peerage, who had long ago been gifted titles and holdings by the crown and ruled over Sinlera, could avoid it. You look older. I brushed his hair from his face. I know you liked that. Most 12-year-olds did. I've never understood how you can stomach standing in that mess, a familiar voice said behind me. It makes my skin curl. I sighed and leaned my head back, letting the midday sun soak into me. The open-air pool where I performed funeral rites was a shout away from the church doors. Ryland rested on a stone slab in the centre of the pool, and if needed, I could sprint to the church and heal anyone who took a turn. The bandits who tried to raid us this morning were all dead save for one, the vile wrought. Don't be rude, Jules, I said without looking. Am I ever? He huffed and dropped something with a sickening crack. Lore! I turned. Julian stood over the crumpled, vile-wrought bandit and held out his bruised hand to me. He was fell-hollowed to the bone. Pine-green eyes, lean muscles from years felling trees, and a deep distrust of anyone not from Fellhollow. I held up my hand. Almost done. I laid 2 square halfens atop Ryan's eyes to hold them shut. Everything had a cost, including death. Most fell folk could barely afford it these days. Well, except for Julian. You don't have to follow the old traditions, you know, he said. You're not from here. No one would blame you. His mother asked for them, I said, and stepped out of the pool, pale pink water muddying the dirt. How am I supposed to convince Fellhollow I'm good enough to marry you without your traditions? He shrugged. Julian didn't follow them. I was as good as adopted by his family, but I'd be an outsider till we were married, probably a little while after too. You up to healing this trash? Asked Julian, nudging the vile wrought with his boot. Fix her enough to talk. We need to know if we got all them bandits. The vile wrought at his feet flinched. Magic rolled off her in waves, raising the hair on my bare arms.